Good morning.
Good morning, Father.
My name is Father John Canary, like the bird, and I'm a fill-in this morning. Father Deerhammer, who many years ago I taught as a young student, called me and asked me to come, which I'm happy to do. Also, if you have any complaints about him, you can blame me. As I told the people last time, actually don't blame me because many years ago, their pastor emeritus, Father George Kane, taught me, so you can blame him. And you may know this, Father George Kane was in the hospital this past week, and he's apparently doing fine. He had a little spell with diverticulitis, so you can keep him in your prayers. Today is Trinity Sunday, and on this Sunday we celebrate the fifth of the great beliefs that make us Christian. The first belief that we have, actually we celebrate at Christmas time, that God so loved the world that He sent His only Son. So in the birth of Jesus, in the Incarnation, we celebrate the first of our great beliefs, that God's love became visible to us in His own Son, Jesus. And the second great belief that we have is in Jesus' life. We call it the experience of God's love as redeeming. Not only in Jesus' teaching and in His miracles, but especially in His suffering and death, as He poured out His life for us out of love. We celebrate God's redemption. And that's true. We know that's the way it works. Redeeming love for all of us happens when we're able to pour out our lives out of love for our spouse and for our children and for the world that we live in. And the third great belief is what we celebrated at Easter, the resurrection. That God's love was faithful to His Son and actually raised Him up. God's love is deep enough and powerful enough even to overcome death. And raised up Jesus and promises to raise us all. And the fourth great belief we celebrated last Sunday at Pentecost, that God's love then is given to all of us through the power of His Spirit. And today we celebrate the culmination of that love in the Trinity, God's triune love, the fullness of His love in the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. 5 great beliefs that mark us as Christians. This is what we believe about God's love. And we also believe that in His love, He has said something to us. God has spoken to us. You know, it's an amazing thing. In the last 2 decades, the United States has spent more than $2 billion going out into space to see if life might have existed out there, either before us or even now. We listen very carefully for any sounds of life. And the U.S. also has spent millions of dollars trying to teach chimpanzees, monkeys, to talk so we could hear them. But in today's world, many people don't believe that God has ever spoken. God has ever spoken to us. But the people of old, they not only believed that, they lived in that. In that first reading from Deuteronomy, Moses is speaking to his people right before they go in the Promised Land. And he says to them, "What God is as great as our God? What God has spoken to His people but our God?" And the people of old understood it. That God had spoken to Abraham. Abraham listened and followed Him. God had spoken to Moses and told him to go and rescue His people, and he responded. And we believe God has spoken to us as well. And his message is three different things. Again, it's in that first reading. God has spoken to his people of old. He said to them, I am your God, and you are my people. God is saying to the people of old and to us as well, as you belong to me. Even Jesus, the Word made flesh. In his public life, he went into the River Jordan. This is the beginning of his whole ministry. And he comes out of the River Jordan, baptized by John. And we're told that the heavens open up. There's no more separation between the earth below and the heavens above, between the human and the divine. In Jesus, the heavens open up. And then the Spirit comes, the dove comes, and then the voice says, you are my beloved. On you my favor rests. God claims him in his love, his own Son. And what we believe is that God also claims us. We belong to him. All of us. It begins at baptism. Not only for Jesus, but for us as well. God claims us in his love. We belong to him. Pope Francis, when he was speaking at one of those public audiences at St. Peter's, he had 30,000 people in front of him. He said to them, now I want you to raise your hand, all of you who know the date of your baptism. Raise your hand. He looked out, he said, I don't see many hands. Raise your hands if you know the date of your baptism. I was listening to this, I was very glad I wasn't there because my hand was not raised. He said this, if you don't know the date of your baptism, it's just some event that happened a long time ago. He said it's so much more than that. God's Spirit claimed us in that baptism. But the truth is this. God's Spirit continues to claim us over and over and over again. From the time we're infants to the time we're much older. Until we finally understand we belong to him. As the second reading says, by his Spirit we are all adopted. We are all sons and daughters of a loving God. That is his first message to us. And his second message, he says in Deuteronomy, to gather all to myself. Not only do we belong to him, but God's love keeps us all together. Doesn't matter our age, our backgrounds, our race, our culture, even our religion. God's love gathers us all to himself, that we might be one, as Jesus says. That's his prayer. That we might be one as he and the Father are one. And young married people, in those first moments of marriage, they know what it is to be one. And parents, when they have their infants, they know what it is to be one. And probably the truth is, all of us, in moments of crisis, we know what it is to be one. But the story of life is more complicated. As people mature in marriage, they find out there are also differences. And sometimes those differences cause tension. And sometimes those differences even can cause separation. And the truth is, as young people grow up, necessarily they become more independent. And they begin to push away. And they grow separate. And in our culture as well, in life in general, there are differences. Because of our backgrounds, sometimes because of our race, and sometimes because of our religion. And what keeps us together? Only a love that is deep enough and wide enough to draw us all into one. God's faithful love. We not only belong to Him, in the end, it is only His love that can keep us together. And the third message in the story of love is in the gospel today. As Jesus comes back, the risen Lord comes back to His disciples in Galilee, where they first met Him. And He comes in a new way, the risen Lord. And He comes to send them out, to go forth to all people, to baptize them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, to claim them in God's love, so that we might all be one. And then He says this, and I will be with you always. The third message of God's love is that we're not alone. We're not alone. He is with us always. Feast of the Holy Trinity, the fifth of our 5 great beliefs, the triune love of God, a love that claims us as His sons and daughters, a love deep enough and wide enough to include everyone, a love that is with us always. It is our faith in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.